Welcome to the Communication Diva Podcast, episode 85. On today's podcast, an interview with Susi Vasseur. Through a fairly wide-ranging discussion on raising teenagers nowadays, Susi wants to make this point. If you want to improve your communication with teenagers, start by listening, really listening to what they have to say. It turns out that one of the things teens want is to be listened to and taken seriously. It almost makes them sound human.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the podcast today. I have a great session for you today with a woman named Susi Vasseur. And Susi and I met at a Women in Business breakfast meeting that I have started attending. And right away, I thought she would be someone that I would like to share with you. She worked in the Surrey School District, which is a local district here nearby to where I am, for 18 years as a special education assistant and inner city secondary school worker. She has been a private therapeutic tutor for 15 years with a methodology called the Orton-Gillingham methodology. She's certified as a teen and parent coach with the parent as coach approach. And she's done all sorts of things with young girls, teen girls, and has started her own company called How To for Parents and Teens. And another thing she does is she's a math tutor. So she mostly spends her time working with teenage girls to help them through math, as well as the other things that she's doing. So she is a great wealth of information, and I'm excited to bring her interview to you today. I wanted to let you know that I finally graduated on May 5th. So if you're listening to this far into the future, that was 2014. And I was very excited to receive my Master of Arts in Public and Pastoral Leadership. That was a very long held goal, and I'm very happy to have finished something. And yeah, so I wanted to share that with you. I'm a bit scratchy in my throat. There's been a lot of sickness going on around here, and so I apologize if I'm sounding kind of deep in my voice, but we're all on the mend here, and I think that's a good thing. I want to talk to you at the end of the show a little bit about some of the things that are going on and that are exciting and that are happening for me as well. But for now, I want to get right into the interview. And so here I present my interview with Susi. Hi, everyone. So here we are with the Communication Diva podcast, and I am really happy to be sitting here with Susi Vasseur, and I am going to welcome you to this and jump right into the topic. Good morning.
Good morning, Jen. It's so awesome to be here on this beautiful day.
It is a stunning day here in the beautiful city of White Rock, which is outside of Vancouver, BC, and we are happy to have the sun because it's been so miserable out for so long. Anyway, I'm here with Susi, and she does a number of different things related to parents and teenagers, both talking with parents about how to talk to their teens and talking to teens about how to deal with parents. So can you tell me how you started with this, Susi?
I guess it's a bit of a long story. As you probably figured out, I was a teen once myself and probably tested everything under the books. But I think my interest came more from my work with teenagers, mostly from a tutoring perspective. So I would sit one-on-one with kids and got a relationship going. And the next thing you know, we were talking about everything. And I think for me, it was the main one was a young girl, and her name is Nicole. And Nicole was one of my sweeties that I started with in grade 6. And by the time she was in grade 9, was definitely going off the deep end. And Nicole could not talk to her parents. She couldn't talk to the school counselor, and she couldn't talk to the community counselor that was set up for her. So guess who got to listen to the stories? Yeah, it was me. And not being trained in that field, most of the time I sat and listened. It was often in horror, complete horror, and I didn't know what to say. And we went through a lot of things together, and I won't share the dirty details. But what it taught me is that more than anything, kids just need to be listened to. And that was the start of an awakening for me.
Wow, that's a really motivating story. That was your beginning. That was it was something that you felt there was a need, and you needed to fill a void somewhere. Or how did you proceed after that?
Well, what I did is that as things just happened, I happened to have a conversation with another parent, and she said, "Oh, I have this wonderful program you need to invest in." And I looked into, and it was called the Academy for Family Coach Training with Diana Sterling. And I went on the website, talked to Diana a couple of times, and I was basically hooked. Because it isn't just about the kids having a rough time, it's basically the parents as well having a rough time. And there's definitely a need to involve both.
And as a parent of and a step parent of 4 children, 2 of whom are adults and 2 are in their teens now, I can certainly relate to that. There were times when I was pulling my hair out and wishing there was someone like you around. So you did the coaching training, and then what happened?
Well, I started to work with mostly parents, and because it was... they were at a loss too. They felt they were losing their children and they didn't know what to do. And I found it most of the time it just came down to mostly language. How are we speaking to our children? And it's quite interesting, based on some of the work in the Parent as Coach approach by Diana Sterling, there really is 3 distinct areas of parenting. The first being from 0 to 6 years old, where, of course, that's a time of intense physical nurturing and teaching our child everything there is to know until they go to school. From 6 to 12, we kind of move from more of a teaching role to an administrator role, where we help them do their homework, get to their sports and music events, and organize their play dates, and kind of just be the administrator. But at the age of around 12 to 13, if we don't take a different approach and become more coach-like, guiding them, helping them, supporting them in whatever it is that they want, they start to push back a lot harder than we would like.
Do you have 2 or 3 main topics that keep coming up over and over again when you're dealing with parents and teens? Are there 3 areas, or maybe there are more, that you could sort of highlight for us to give us an idea of what it is people are coming to deal with?
Well, one of the main ones, of course, is my parents never listened to me. And the irony about that one is the parents say, my teen never listens to me, which makes me chuckle because really it's almost like they're speaking a different language. So it comes down to that basic, how do we listen? How do we respect each other and find a common ground? The other area is around the teens' very desperate need to find their own identity. And at that same time, the parent is wanting to control more because they're a little afraid of this emerging identity, and they're feeling like they're losing their control of their child and afraid of what's coming next. So there's that overprotective factor that comes into play quite a lot, and kids just need to experience that a little bit at a time because they're going to be adults pretty soon. I think if there was just another area, and again, it's all really about the communication. It's about listening deeply, really listening. And when we listen, we need to do it with mouth shut.
Good point.
So there's all that proverbial, just have a visual of zipping up the lips, because often what happens, the parents say, I am listening. But what's happening is that their mind is already coming up with the response, coming up with the advice. And for the most part, the kids don't want the advice. They just want to be listened to and acknowledged.
And it's such a hard role sitting there as parent and not, imagining what might happen if the child does X or the teen does X. Because, you can maybe see beyond the immediate and see what might happen to this kid if they do proceed with their plan. And so you want to stop them from being hurt, which is a natural parental response. But to allow them to make their own mistakes is really, I think that takes such courage.
Yes, huge courage. And unfortunately, if we don't let them make some mistakes, they never learn how to make decisions. They never learn how to kind of work with, what do I do now that I've made the mistake? How do I either find the right thing to do? What do I learn from this experience? So in essence, they grow up actually not trusting themselves, which as a young adult becomes very detrimental. So often I've talked to so many parents where the parents have done everything for their child right through, and all of a sudden the child goes to college and they don't know how to survive because they've never made a decision. And many of them will, drop out or go through a state of great anxiety trying to figure out, what do I do next? And so then mom and dad are on speed dial, and that's kind of unfortunate because they really need to know how to make those little decisions on their own.
And be independent. I know that actually we were hearing stories about a friend of one of my kids whose parents did absolutely everything for him. And unfortunately, there are some basic things around the house that this young man doesn't know how to do now because everything was always done for him all the way along. And in a way, that's a disservice, isn't it?
Yeah, because when they don't learn to do those little things, after a while, often parents think, it's so competitive out there. As long as you go to school and get the best marks you can and get that foothold, I will take care of the rest. In the meantime, the young person feels they have no role in the family. They don't have anything that they're accountable for except for this marks thing and this, promise of great success if only they do this one thing. And they do feel like they're not part of their family in a lot of ways.
That's interesting. And what happens if they don't reach that success? Because there are other kinds of success.
Oh, don't get me started on that one. Yeah, really, what we're teaching them by making their own decisions is how to be resilient. And in life, there's no certainty. So a good high school mark and a scholarship to a good university and possibly a degree means nothing necessarily in life. Yes, education is very, very important, but often it's just a stepping stone to something else. And that's, in my family, has been a huge one. Neither of my children are doing anything remotely to what they went to school for. Are they happy they went to school? Absolutely. But really, it was just about, in some ways, proving to the world that I am capable of higher learning and that I have, the capability of doing these things. But it really needs to be a stepping stone to finding something that they're passionate about and something that they can grow on and move on into their own identity.
Yeah, because it's really sad to have someone who's stuck in a job that they went to university for, that they didn't want to do in the first place, and now they're trapped in this work world and they're not living their passion. I find that exceedingly sad.
Yes, very sad. And it's one of the things I often talk to teenagers about, that you have to look at the bigger picture in life. And, it's very well known that you'll probably change professions 2 or 3 times. It's well known that getting a degree is not the stepping stone to instant monetary success, unfortunately. And, it really is about having dreams and aspirations and having a creative mind to grow. Because to be successful in this world, you have to be doing something you love. If you're not, you wake up one day and you just wonder, what have I missed? Is this all there is to life? Is to get up in the morning, go to work, come home, and start over again the next day.
So what would you tell a teen maybe that's listening right now? What could you tell a teen that they could implement or they could do today?
I was just thinking something about something my son said to me very recently, and he's now 29 and living in Brazil, but he said, get out of the bubble. And it was an interesting analogy, I thought, because he said, my whole life although, he loved growing up where he did and all the things that he did, he said, but it's a bubble. It's not real. You need to get out in the world. You need to go see how other people live, what else is out there, what other people think, what other people do, how they find their passion. So I think if I was to give any advice is to don't see university as the end-all and be-all. It is just one of the stepping stones. But find something, go out in the world in whatever way possible and see what else is out there. Explore.
So explore and go do something different and go. Yeah, because I can see that you can be sheltered and protected, and you can have this imagining that this is the only way people live. So would you recommend that parents take kids traveling if they can, or take them into different settings, different situations? How would you help them get out of the bubble?
Definitely traveling, and especially as a family, that's a wonderful thing. But I also, my children were strongly recommended that they take a year out after high school and take that much-needed break, first of all, to celebrate what they've done up till now and to see the future as not just one ongoing roller coaster ride, but to see it from maybe a slightly different angle. Go to another country. There's lots of wonderful programs out there that take students to different countries and different continents where they can work and learn with other people and without mom and dad. Once again, they have to then learn some skills. I always remember taking my son to England on his gap year and realizing that I'd never taught him how to take a bus. It was a little bit late, but that was one of the things. But while he was there, and he ended up traveling throughout Europe, that was a huge, huge learning experience for him, and helped him then through going to university to expand his mind about where else would I like to travel to? What else do I have to learn? Who can I connect with? And it was much the same for my daughter. She learned so many amazing skills by taking a gap year, and as I said, there's so many programs where you can go. My daughter ended up in the city of Dunedin in New Zealand for 8 months. The learning curve, personally, as an independent, growing human being, is absolutely amazing.
And I know some people can't travel. They can't afford to travel, or their circumstances are such that they can't. Is there something they could do in their own area that would sort of imitate this or give them the same kind of learning experiences?
I think anything that takes them slightly out of their comfort zone. So even if you live in a city or a community where there's a group doing something that you're curious about, volunteer, see things from another person's perspective, help out in some way, whether it's with an animal shelter, whether it's with young people, whether it's through coaching or, helping out with a soup kitchen. Just seeing that life is not just about what's happening in your immediate, here comes the word bubble again, but to let you know that there's a bigger world out there and that there's many things to consider.
So from the parent perspective, we're actually doing the kids, our teens, a disservice by doing everything for them and by not allowing them to spread out a little bit. What was that expression? Sow your wild oats. But, go out and try some things, even things like allowing a child to take a bus. People are terrified to let kids out of their sight. I heard some horrible statistic not that long ago about children being driven to school because of fear. Not only is it horrendous for the environment, but it's really bad physically for the child. And apparently a walk to school, a half-hour or 20-minute walk to school before school improves their learning in school. And I was stunned to hear that it's because people are afraid, so afraid, that their child will be hurt, abducted, something will happen to them on their way to school, that we're now driving kids to school. For that reason, I thought, whoa, what has happened? Because when I was a kid, it was very rare that you'd get a ride to school. I was on buses and everything when I was much younger, and we seem to be afraid now.
There's a huge, huge part of it is fear. And I think more mothers are working now, so they go to work and they just want that peace of mind, and I get that. But again, we're basically sending the message to our kids that we don't trust them, that they're not capable of that. I heard an interesting talk by Dr. Alex Lloyd, a psychologist from Toronto, and he said that one of the main way that young children die is by motor vehicle accidents. So by actually driving them to school, there's a bigger chance of them being hurt or killed than as if they were to walk on their own. And I thought that was kind of an interesting perspective. And it's so true. If you've ever been in the school lineup of cars dropping their kids off, it's amazing that more things don't happen. And we just teach our kids, once again, they're not capable. And as you mentioned, physically, they don't get that much needed workout, which is becoming less and less because when they get home from school, they're basically sitting in front of a TV as well, and they lose that opportunity to move.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what is something maybe that you could tell a parent that a parent could do today to make a difference in the communication that they're having with their child?
I think one of the things is to listen deeply, and you're sometimes going to hear things that you don't particularly want to hear. And be okay with that, because that's how they learn to make up their mind and to figure things out for themselves. Sometimes they're just putting things out there, sometimes to see how they're received. And the more you overreact, the less you're going to hear from them. So be curious, talk in a way that is respectful, try to not interrupt, hear their full story. You can be curious about that again and ask questions. You don't have to agree with them. In fact, that's something that you can have an agreement about. I don't necessarily agree with what you're saying, but that's really interesting because we all have different perspectives. And that's the only way that they're going to kind of, in their own mind, figure out what is right for them.
So listening deeply, and as you said earlier, keeping their mouths more closed than open. And that can be really hard when emotions get into play. So when you do your coaching, are you teaching parents about that?
Yes. I think we all have to create that awareness around ourselves. What is the emotion that's coming up? Is it fear? Are we ashamed that somebody else is going to hear something? Because parenting is also a very shame-based culture. We're always a little bit worried what other people think, and too often other people are quite willing to tell you that you're being a bad parent. Perhaps they do see your child walking to school by themselves. It's more common for people to think, oh my God, where are the parents when they see that? So we have to get to that place of knowing that we're doing the best for our child, and it's not about other people, and that's not always an easy thing to do.
Yeah, I heard something that I quote that I really like. What other people think of you is none of your business. I love that quote. But it's true. It's hard because I know that when my son was growing up, he stopped cutting his hair in grade 8. And the reason behind it was, in my opinion, a really valuable reason. He wanted to grow his hair until grade 12 and cut it off and donate it to make a wig. And he has the most beautiful, thick, shiny, gorgeous, any woman would die for hair. And but I did sometimes feel judged because there's my kid, he was very tall, and walking down the street with, hair down to, wearing bandanas with his, longboard under his arm, looking like the skater dude. And I thought, just come and know my kid, but I would sometimes get people making comments. And I thought, wow, you have to be really close to your kid and be comfortable with yourself to be able to not get defensive about stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it also comes back, don't judge another person until you've walked a mile in their shoes. And I think that comes into play so much with parenting. We have no idea what's going on in other people's homes, in other people's lives, what they're dealing with. Maybe there's loss in the family. Maybe a job is going astray. Maybe there's money issues. Maybe that there's other battles. And I always say, if it's not permanent and it's not illegal or immoral, maybe that's just your child's way of expressing themselves, and we shouldn't be judging people on that. Yeah.
It's amazing that we do, though. He had transit buses not stop to pick him up because of how he looked.
Yeah.
You know, he would be so mad because he'd be half an hour late for something and the bus wouldn't stop. I thought, that's terrible, you know, just from someone's appearance.
Yeah, I find that interesting. My son did the clean-cut look until he was 25 and quit his corporate job. And now living in Brazil, he has hair down his back and it's curly and, you know, he has the full beard. And I know that in some ways people look at his picture now on social media and they go, oh my God, what happened to him? But what's happened to him was, and it was amazing to witness, is a rebirth of what is really important to him. And if hair is all that's defining him in people's minds, then I feel sorry for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, really, it's about who you are as a person and what your passions are, and you know, how well you play in the sandbox, as Daniel Goleman says in his emotional intelligence stuff. It's almost more important, as you say, than what credentials you have, is how well you get along with others, and that seems to be your whole your mission here, is to help the parents and teens get along better. And what a wonderful thing. Have you had any insights that you'd like to share in doing some of these things? Any aha moments in what you've been doing?
I guess my main insights is that I'm never at a loss to be amazed at how many things there are out there that are either troubling parents or are troubling teens, and things that I've never thought of. But again, it's not important, because if it is an issue, it needs to be addressed, and we all need to be heard. And so that's why my tagline is listen from the heart. We all need to be heard, whether it's parents or whether it's the teens. We just really need to know that other people are willing to listen to us, to deeply listen, and maybe not fully understand, but to acknowledge that we have our own voice and that we need to be heard.
Wonderful. Well, I'm so glad that I've met you and that you're doing this work. And I know you've got a workshop coming up. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the workshop that you've got coming up? And I understand you do these workshops and you do some speaking events around, and you're available for these kinds of things if people want to invite you to come and speak to their parent groups or their teen classrooms or any of those kinds of things. You're available and you have great information for that.
Yeah, I do a workshop, and it's called Navigating the Teen Years, and it's really a 3-night workshop, and we learn skills, and every night you go home and you have a little bit of homework, and I find that is the best way to kind of take the knowledge, to actually put it into practice, and then come back the next day and see what worked and what didn't work. And the nice part about a workshop is that you have also the collective wisdom of other people in the room, and the shared knowledge that you aren't the only parent that's worried about what's going on in your home. And that feels good from a lot of different levels. So we do focus on things like mutual respect, on listening, shifting who we are as a person as we allow our child to develop and grow into their own being. And the other thing is that I love to focus on some of the work by Dr. William Glasser about what are some of the deadly habits of external control. Because as our teens grow, they need to not be controlled, because they will fight you every tooth and nail on that one. So I do the workshop out of my home, but I'm considering doing it online one of these days. But I love talking to parent groups about this particular topic. And another topic that's been kind of a fun one, and if you're a woman, you may relate to this. It's called When Raging Hormones Collide, Parenting Your Teenage Daughter, because that's a whole new chapter in that teen phase. And if you're a mom and if you have a teenage daughter, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Great. So if people want to know more about you, Susi, where can they reach you?
So my website is www.heartsopeningwide.ca, or you can email me at susie@heartsopeningwide.ca.
Great. And you are also on Twitter, and I will put links to all of those things on the show notes at communicationdiva.com. And do you have one last nugget of wisdom for our listener?
Well, as a parent in particular, when your teen is up to something that you don't know what to make of it, don't take it personally. It's not about you. It's what your teen's doing. So there may be things that you need to deal with, but this is not your personal battle.
That's really good advice because it's so easy to go there, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for this conversation, Susie. I've really enjoyed it, and I think you've given some very valuable advice to people out there, both parent and teens. And if you want to check out Susie's website, please do so and leave some comments for her or ask her a question. I'm sure she'd love to hear from you. Thanks again, Susie, and we'll talk to you soon.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Jen.
So I hope you got as much out of that as I did. It was a wonderful conversation, and I would encourage you to go check out heartsopeningwide.ca and see more about what Susie is up to. And so I wanted to mention a few things before I press the stop button here. And one of the things is that I found out, I had a great conversation with Rob over at Libsyn, which is the company that hosts the podcast you're listening to. And I was talking to Rob about female podcasters, and I learned an interesting statistic. I learned that for every 7,800 female bloggers, there is one female podcaster. That's an incredible statistic. And so I thought that was rather stunning. And so I wanted to share that with you. And I also wanted to say that if you are at all interested in sharing your story through the medium of podcasting, I have some fabulous resources for you over on the Communication Diva website under the resources page that I have just set up. I've set up some links to things like WordPress and the thesis theme. I have set up a link to Bluehost, which is the service that hosts the website that I use for Communication Diva. I'm really happy with Bluehost because they are a fantastic service provider, and I've always had great customer service from the people there. If you decide to start your own podcast, there are a couple of fantastic resources for you. One of them is the Libsyn site. There is a coupon code on the Communication Diva website. The coupon code is DIVA, and you can get up to 2 months of free hosting if you decide to go with a podcast. And if you have no idea how to start a podcast, my friend Cliff Ravenscraft has offered a fantastic deal for us at Communication Diva. If you put in the promo code DIVA for his podcasting A to Z course, you will get a $500 discount on this amazing month-long comprehensive course. So all of these details are on the website at communicationdiva.com under the resources tab, and I do encourage you to go and check it out if you are at all interested in podcasting and sharing your message and your voice with the world. And honestly, particularly if you're a woman, there's lots of room out there to be doing this. All right, so lots of exciting things. I did mention last time under the products tab of the website, the public speaking success, the Communication Diva's guide to speaking with confidence. And that is an audio product that I have created in case you are interested at all in speaking in public, or if you have to speak in public and are terrified about it. I've got some very good resources there. They're all audio files that are downloaded directly to whatever device you're listening to me on now, and it's a very good value for the price. So I encourage you to take a look at that as well. And you might want to give that as a gift, because some people have to speak at weddings or at funerals and just need some extra encouragement. They might have to do a report at school. There are lots and lots of reasons why you might need some help with public speaking. So those are some things that are happening. I've got lots going on. I'm taking a leave for a year from my teaching in order to work on the Communication Diva stuff. I am working at a lovely congregation with the church that I'm at, and I'm very much enjoying working with those people, and I'm just having a lot of fun right now. And I'm out in my garden, and I've sent out some pictures on Twitter of the garden, please come over to iTunes and give us a rating, and come and see us on the Communication Diva Facebook page as well. Lots of places for you to engage and continue the conversation. Thanks again for listening. This is Jenn Swanson with Communication Diva Podcast. I'm so glad that you are here, and until next time, keep talking.